But I'm really excited about our next guest. We've got Burgess Owens joining us. He's a former NFL football player, but also running for Congress up in Utah. But Burgess, thanks so much for joining and being a part of this Saving America conference.
Jeff, thank you so much. I love the topic. It's all about saving America, and I think we the people will come together and realize how important that is at this particular point of our history.
Absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely. So I want to start off really quick. What made you decide, okay, I want to run for Congress? Because I always feel like everybody's always got like a motivating factor or a reason why they're like, okay, here was that push, here was that nudge. So for you, what was that?
Okay. That's a good question, because I'm one of those guys that for years have always said I would never ever be a politician. But a lot of it has to go back to my upbringing. I grew up down in Deep South in the 60s, the days of KKK, Jim Crow, and segregation. But I also lived in a very, very blessed community. It was a middle-class community and a middle-class family, and that was 50% of the black community during that time across our country, days of segregation. So I was taught very simply things that were important: respect for authority, love for country. My dad was a World War II vet, and he came back and taught us those basic themes like never let your flag touch the ground, God, country, family. And what's interesting is we had an understanding that even though things weren't perfect, that we believed in the American dream. We were taught the Constitution. We were taught pride in our race, education, all the things. Matter of fact, the tenets that I like to highlight that I think will bring our country back, we were taught very simply, and I call it head, heart, hands, and home. Education, God, industry, and family. We get back those basics. We have it nailed down. So what happened, I played in the NFL for 10 years. I left in '83 after playing with the Raiders, back when the Raiders used to win football games. But at that time, I recognized that my race, my community was going in the wrong trajectory. It's taken me 30 plus years to kind of get to the point where I was able to finally, after going into the corporate environment, to do something I thought would make a difference, which is work with at-risk kids. I started a not-for-profit out here called Second Chance for Youth, working with young boys and girls coming out of the juvenile system and letting them know this country is truly about second chances. All you have to do is just figure out what your dreams are, get around the right kind of people, and good things can happen. The past could be the past. I realized about last summer that the kids I work with here, and the millions of kids across our country, do not have a chance as long as the House is controlled by the leftists, the Democrats. And it's because of the Democratic policies, the leftist policies over the decades, is why our kids, number one, are at risk today. And that will not change. It's the policies that they give them hopelessness, illiteracy, very little value for self or other life. That's what they do best. And I realized as long as they're in control, we don't have a shot. So I decided to take the leap. And I'm so excited about it right now because I now understand a couple things. We have, as Americans, and if you know our history, this all makes sense. We, as Americans, have always done the right things for the right reasons at the right time. In 2016, we ended up electing a president, President Trump, who a lot of us didn't know a lot about. But we knew what we didn't want. We didn't want the socialists, the angry atheists or anti-God ideology of Marxism. So we knew we didn't want that. And so we took a shot on President Trump, and he's been the right guy for the right time. Right now, not only does he show what love for country looks like, but what it looks like to go up against bullies. And I believe personally that this coming House, the seat I'm running for, the District 4, was taken over last go around from Mayor Love. Ben McAdams. And it was a very, very important seat. Matter of fact, it's between number 1 and 3 of must-have across the country in order to get our House back. So the Democrats must have it to keep their power. We must have it to get back our country. So I'm excited about the values of this particular district being the linchpin of our country. And I think what's happening at this point now is that our country, because of everything that we're going through, we're beginning to wake up. We have a lot of things going on. And I've been getting emails lately about people just getting disparaged about all the negative that's going on. You see the tyranny. You see the church being attacked. You see institutions like the FBI and DOJ that are totally corrupt. And we wonder what happened to our America. Well, what's happening now? Thank goodness, Americans are waking up. I'll tell you one thing that I'm totally excited about America that I know, whether it be 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. We have a tendency of being very optimistic. We're eternal optimists because we dream big. We go after our dreams. We spend our time working with our kids and looking for our future. And sometimes we go to sleep at the wheel. It takes things like 9/11, Pearl Harbor and what's going on now, for Americans to say, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. This is not the country that I was taught about, and it's not the dreams that I've always wanted. We're waking up big time. We're beginning to see that it's no longer a hypothetical theme of what socialism and Marxism is. It is pure evil. And from a person who's grown up in a race that has been taken advantage of, used, abused, discarded by the leftists, it is pure evil. And what's happening right now, Americans are going to see that it's not just minorities that they go after. They'll go after anybody. If you're a Democrat right now that has a business, that you want to run it, you want to raise it and build your kids into their future and pass it on down the road, guess what? You're just nothing but fodder right now. They could care less about your business, because in their narrative, they need for you to fail for them to succeed in November. They're right now tearing down, burning down the cities in which the most at-risk people, those in the inner city that's trying their best to live the American dream, build businesses, serve each other. And guess what they're allowing them to do? Give them space so these anarchists can go in and burn it down. Why? Because it gets people riled up to go out and vote. That's been the MO for these guys for decades. So I'm excited about where we are right now, Jeff, to be honest with you. I think what happens when Americans are attacked and we begin to understand it together, no matter whether Democrat, Independent, or Republican, we come together, we focus on our future, we begin to realize who the true enemy is, and it's not each other. It's the Marxists and socialists who's trying to destroy our country, and have been doing it for a long, long time, decades. And we're going to wake up. And this time we wake up, we'll educate ourselves to what they look like. And they look like us. They sound like us. They even call themselves Americans. They pat us on the back. And meanwhile, they're trying to destroy everything that we work hard to do, build our dreams, our future, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So we're going to be okay. I really feel good about this. And as soon as we get the House back, this new group of freshmen will duplicate our president. We'll go in there not to become career politicians, to live the life of kings and queens and use other people. We're going to go in because we love our country. We want to serve our country and come back and live with the legislation that we've actually put in place.
Absolutely, which is in all reality the way the founding fathers originally intended it for it to be. But one thing that I wanted to kind of point out as well, kind of as you were talking, and it was just kind of hit me as you were talking there, was that like we're looking at these riots and we're looking at like the government power grab that we're seeing in relation to the coronavirus and that sort of thing. But I think the thing that we need to remember as conservatives is that these are just symptoms of the problem. They're not the problem itself. It's this deeper ideology of socialism and Marxism. And then you were even mentioning a lot of the laws and bills that are being passed and that sort of thing. What are the actual laws and maybe the focuses of the socialists and Marxists that are rooting themselves now and exposing themselves with these riots and that sort of thing?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that. I'm gonna give you a little bit of Black history to show you how devious these people are. First of all, Karl Marx, the founder of socialism, probably one of the worst excuses of a man I've ever read about. The guy was just a whiner and a wimp. He thought he was too smart to work, so two of his kids end up starving to death. He never got a job. And yet that's the philosophy that we take from this guy and we pass on to our schools as if it's something that works. No, his statement was very, very simply, because they work on stealth. It's a godless ideology. The first battleground is the rewriting of history. I tell you, my friends, if we lose our history, we don't understand what we the people have done together, we lose all of our vision of what we can do together in the future, because we don't have pride in our past. It is what's made me so confident about being American, because I do know my history. I know that every single generation of Americans get better and better looking at each other from inside out versus outside in, because we're based on the Judeo-Christian values that teaches us no matter how we worship him, that God is at the center of everything we do. And as we go out and we focus on what can I do to get the blessings by blessing other people, that becomes a habit. That becomes a culture of America. And we become the most serving, giving country in the history of mankind. Well, there's another side. There's a spiritual battle we're going up against. The Marxists and socialists and communists hate that philosophy. They want to be God. And in the process of doing that, they become self-centered, narcissists, sociopaths, you name it. They'll do anything they can to look in your face and smile in your face and then destroy you at the same time. I can go back on a little bit of history. For those who don't know the history of the NAACP, here's a good example of it. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, the Black community, because of those tenets I just mentioned, education, God, family, and industry, we literally led the country in the growth of the middle class, because that is the keynote. That's the foundation of middle class, is thinking outside the box, educating yourself, being proud of who you are and respecting others, because We understand it's a commandment. We need to do that. We led our country to growth of the middle class, led our country men matriculated from college, led our country men committed to marriage, over 70%, and led our country the percentage of entrepreneurs, over 40%. That is the community I grew up in, by the way, in a segregated community many people don't hear about. And that was the community of almost a century of growth in which we were the most competitive race in our country, giving back, being proud of, sending over 100,000 black men to war outside our country to fight for this country. That's the community I grew up in. Well, let me tell you what happened in 1910. There's a little organization called the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The only problem with that is there wasn't not started by colored people. It was started by 21 white socialists, Marxists, atheists, race-controlled Democrats. Of course, they do what they do best. They put a little black face out in front of them. W. Du Bois, who's another communist, ended up leaving our country at the end of his life, upset. But at the end of the day, that's the way these guys work. They work on stealth. They hide behind the curtains. They put a nice facade in front of a black whatever, and then behind the scenes they do their deal. This is what we're up against, and this is what we have to recognize when we talk about saving our country. Saving our country isn't as obvious as we would like it to be. We have to be educated. We have to understand what our true rights are, so we understand when those rights have been taken away, what it looks like. If you don't know the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, put in the Independence, Declaration of Independence, we don't understand that. If we don't understand things like what true men are created equal, those concepts that has never been put together any place in the history of mankind, if we don't know it, guess what happens? It can be taken away without us realizing it. When the Marxists started to get into our school system, one of John Dewey was one of the board members of the NAACP, that Marxist atheist group that I was talking about. So you wonder why the public school system is a mess that it is today? Well, for us it's a mess, but for them it's great. They're training our kids to be little socialists and Marxists, those that they teach at all. You go to the state of California, you have 75% of the black boys in the state of California cannot pass standard reading and writing tests. What does the future look like today in 2020 when you cannot read and write? We're not going to talk about Space Force. We're not going to have this conversation that we're having right now. Those who can't think are going to be run by emotion. They're the ones going to go out on the street, tear down the communities, never know that we have a president for the last 3 years that's given them the best opportunities for education, for job opportunities, for getting out of debt, to get into the free market. They have no idea because they can't read, write, and think. They have no connection with God because they cannot read, write, and think. That's what the left wants to do. And now, I'm saying this in this context. My race stands as a warning beacon for the rest of our country. What they've done to us is what they're trying to do to our country. Why I'm so passionate about this run that I'm going through right now, I know what it looks like. I know what these people are. I know what evil looks like. And I do not want that to happen to my country. I want my kids, my grandkids to grow up in a country better than the one I grew up in. And I tell you what, in so many ways, we are so much better. The fact that we're having this conversation where we are right now, technology is there. Color's not even been an issue. 50 years ago, when I was the third black to go to the University of Miami as playing a football scholarship, race was everything. You know, guys, we've come so far, but what we have to recognize is that evil is always at the doorstep. And it's not the obvious. It's not what they tell us. It's behind the curtains. So education has to be big. We need to make sure that we continue to deregulate our economy, our society, so people who have a dream of going out and taking a risk can do so. What's made our country so unique, so great, is our middle class, period. We have the most diverse, excited, robust middle class than anybody in the history of mankind. And that's why, by the way, you find words like loyalty, faith, service, tenacity, all those things that happen in the middle class because they have a very empathy, very, very close to the connection that made our country great. So what we have to do is make sure that we allow anyone who's poor to have the opportunity to pull themselves out of that to that middle class so they can join those who can now give back, who can now dream bigger. Of course, the leftists would love to put as many regulations on that as possible. One of the good things that's happened, and I have to say that Bad things will always happen. The key is, what do we do about it? What can we learn from it? Americans are not the ones that despair. Americans, in our hearts and our minds, we look at something, we go through it, and we say, well, what can I learn from it? How can I get better or do a better job the next time? Well, already we've had through this virus, through this death of the virus, we already have an understanding a little bit better of how government and free market can work together. We've had a president who has knocked down regulations at a pace that these guys on the left have put together for decades, and all of a sudden it's disappearing. You wonder why they're frantic, why they're getting crazy? He's undoing their deal for decades to get their power. He's undoing it within months and years. So we have to make sure that every single American who has a dream of running a business, of serving their community, of learning how to control emotions. Because one thing about a business owner, the business owner wants that customer to come back. So guess what he'll do? He'll control himself. He'll make sure that guy feels good no matter how much of a knucklehead he might be. He wants them to come back and buy more products. So that's what we do. That's part of the free market. So if we understand that for the first time, literally, we have the right guy who not only loves our country and will do it for free, but also understands business and wants our country not only to be very healthy, be self-sufficient, but understand that we can do things ourselves that we've been putting out to other people in the past. And most important, the most important thing of all this, because I have not seen this since Reagan, we have a guy who understands, who hates bullies. And I played football again back down south, one of 4 players on my high school team, and I was taught a very strong lesson by my dad when I was 16 years old. I was dealing with a bully. He says, Burgess, how you deal with a bully is this. You find him when you run through the line, you find him, you run at him as fast as you can and hit him as hard as you can. And this guy had no idea what was coming. I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen after it was all said and done, because he was bigger than I was and all that kind of stuff. But I took faith in my father, and guess what? It changed everything. Not only did I gain respect for that process, but years later we ended up being friends for a brief while. So the point I'm making is that we need a leader who hates bullies. We found that. Don't worry about his tweets. Worry about his results. And look at how crazy he's driving the enemy, the leftists who hate our country. That's all an indication. If he's effective, if the leftists were all happy with him, like they were with Obama and actually with Bush, hey, we wouldn't have a problem. We have a guy right now who loves our country and will drive them nuts. And I love that. So a long answer to a short question.
No, but it's really good. But also, I think the other question that I had for you, kind of going along with what you were saying right here, is, we've got somebody like President Trump who has been deregulating, who has been, he did create, the greatest economy that I can remember. I mean, at what point it seems like there's a disconnect between what he's actually doing and then the response to him from the left, and then also from people in minority communities and lower class and things like that. And we're seeing that with the attacks, like even last night on the White House. I mean, there's a lot of hatred, but there's this disconnect. How do we bridge the gap between what conservatives are actually doing and relay that to the people that are staunchly opposed to us?
We have to understand the disconnect is on purpose. So if we start off with that premise, as no matter how much good our president is going to do, there's an evil that wants to disconnect that from the people that they oversee. These people love misery. They use misery as a political strategy. They do it. The worse off these people are, the more they're dependent on them versus God, the better they are. So we have to understand that propaganda is a great tool. They've used it for a long, long time. Here's what I made a promise. I was actually a prediction. I was on Fox News speaking to Stuart Varney, and I said this is before the November 16 elections. I said, America, if you give us 4 years, and I promise you that we will roll up our sleeves, conservative blacks particularly, will roll up our sleeves. We'll go out there and we will show folks what it looks like to live the American dream. We'll make sure we can teach, we can mentor, we can do the things, give people hope. Give us 4 years. Well, guess what's happened? Within the last 4 years, President Trump had the lowest unemployment in the history of our country for blacks, Hispanics, Asians, women, veterans, teens. And how about this one? This is the gun that got me excited. Within 2 years, there was a 400% growth in black business ownership. If you understand the power of that, I grew up in a community, again, with 40% were black business owners, which ended up translating to 50% of middle-class Americans across our country, no matter what state they might live in. When you understand the power of someone who says, you know what, I have faith in myself. I have faith I do the right thing. I treat people right. I give a product they want to give their money to. I can make sure my community is great. My kids will come behind me, and their influence, my name will be a great name. That is the essence of business ownership. It's more than just opening up a store and selling goods. It's the mentality. It's the pride that goes into that process of making sure they're producing and giving, and people respect that. So 400% increase in black business ownership in 2 years was enormous for me. Now, the left doesn't care about any of this. So you have to understand, when you talk about evil, evil hates good. And evil will do anything without any shame, without any consciousness. They will destroy lives, as we've seen the DOJ and the FBI destroy lives and go to sleep with no concern, happy and actually in their moments actually boast about it. So knowing that, we have to realize that the media we cannot expect from CNN, MSNBC, they're going to come up with lies. There's going to be no accountability there. So we have to make sure we get behind the curtains and on a one-on-one basis serve everybody we can, particularly in the black community that's at risk. Let's get in and serve. What happens with service is people fall in love with each other. All of a sudden, black and white is not an issue anymore. You have in Minnesota right now, Minneapolis, what's going on? You have these places that have been burned out. Guess what's happening? People from across the state are coming in and helping to sweep up the mess. So they're doing exactly opposite of what the folks did just a couple nights ago. And guess what happens when you do that? People look up and say, you know what? This is a white guy, a German guy, a Jewish guy, a black guy. What does it make a difference? We're here together doing the same thing with the same reasons, and we have a friendship. So we have to realize that we're in the long game here. It's not going to stop. We're going to win this battle in November. We're going to get the House back. The left, they have a long game. When I talk about the NAACP, we didn't see the impact of the NAACP for decades. But when we have evil, the evil is patient. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to first educate ourselves and make sure our kids know how to read, write, and think, and recognize that the events like Black Entertainment Television, NAACP, the Black Caucus, these people are not only anti-black, they're anti-American. And I should say it opposite. They are not anti-American, but anti-black. They are willing to use and abuse their own race so they can get power. And that's the self-centeredness of those areas. So if we understand that, Jeff, and prepare ourselves that life is not going to be always fair, because sometimes the bad guys win for a little bit. Look at General Flynn. He's gone through 3 years of pure hell. And at some point you wonder, how much can a guy like that go through that's totally unfair? Now we realize, guess what? Everything comes around. Just give it time. It all comes around and it all works out.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, we're pretty much out of time. But before we go, I wanted to give you a chance. If people want to be following you, following your campaign, that sort of thing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Please do so at Burgess for Utah, those 4 tenets I talked about. And again, this is a national referendum. So I know for many guys, you don't know a lot about this District 4 in Utah, but this District 4, it represents the same values you do out there in America. That's why I'm standing here. That's why I'm having this conversation. Please support me, because we win this seat. We get it back from Ben McAdams. Guess what? We win the House back. We win the House back. We have a nation that was back on track that's supporting our president in a way that we all wanted to have happen. So Burgess for Utah. You see my emails there, Twitter, Facebook, all that's there. So please join me there and join my cause and help us to win this thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation and that sort of thing. And again, everything you're talking about is vitally important and very relevant to everything that's going on today. So definitely, everybody, check out his website. And if you can help and support or whatever it might be, definitely do that. So thanks so much for coming on here. I really appreciate it.
Jeff, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. All the best. Keep up the good work. All right?
Thank you very much. And then for everybody else.